Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good to see you. I am very, very excited to host you because the last time I did with hello. We are very happy to see you. I guess that the guys without the camera are still in bed in Israel. Shnat. We call it Shnat, Olivia. So we have some English-speaking guest today, so we will practice your English. And Olivia is a teacher here at the Overseas Family School, so try not to make too many mistakes. But she handles with me, so she will be okay. So I don't know some of the names here. So I'm Karni Sommer, food explorer, and I live in Singapore for 10 years. I came for half a year, but the food was so good, so I decided to stay more. I have 3 kids, and I have a company named Wok'n'Stroll, which is a company for culinary adventures in Singapore, or food tours. Unfortunately, since Chinese New Year 2020, or end of January, I found myself, how would I say, between jobs or unemployed, without any tourists that will join me for market tours and other experiences. So since then, I'm back to my there is some noises. Is it from me or from someone else? So since then, since the corona came to our life, I'm inside the kitchen cooking all day. And as I like people and not only cooking, so I started to host my colleagues from around the world doing food tours and cultural tours in the world. Maybe next week we will host some local chefs here in Singapore, in Foodies in Asia, which is the community that I manage. And today we are hosting Itay. So I know Itay since we were together in class and in the Scouts. But since we went each one to the army and...
I think since we were 18, we like it broke touch.
Yeah. So the next time I met him was in a foodie group online. Anyway, this is about me, but today we're talking about Itay that speaks 3 languages or 4. Yalla, let's start.
4. L'chaim. So my name is Itay Novik. I'm originally from Israel, as Karni said. We know each other from school, from the 3rd year. And I live in Berlin, but I lived before in Italy. I lived in Milan. So I left Israel in 2005. I studied in Italy, industrial design. I lived in Milan for 6 years and been living in Berlin since 2011. I have my own brand for culinary tours in Berlin. I'm doing culinary tours and other things I will explain in a few minutes. And I just celebrated 5 years yesterday, 5 years anniversary for my brand, for Elements of Food.
Cheers, everyone. I hope everyone has a drink with him.
Yeah.
Beside Eyal that has ice cream, but okay. It's good enough. Gelato.
So, as Karni, I also found myself in between jobs. My last tour, I think, was on the 29th of February, and because it was a German tour, so it was locals. So people were still here in Berlin, but we don't have tourists basically from the end of February. So I mean that was like the week. From the end of February until the start of March, that was the week where everything was cancelled. And I'm also doing right now a lot of online activities. I'm doing my own talks, not international, but more Berlin oriented. So I host chefs and people from the culinary scene in Berlin. I'm trying to do it weekly. I did it last week. We did it with Gal Ben Moshe, who Gal is quite, I mean, he's now one of the hottest chefs in Berlin because he just won the first Michelin star 1 month ago. And 2 weeks after that, he had to close his restaurant, of course, because due to the corona issue. So, I mean, it was very interesting, of course, to talk about that. You can also find it online. I will show later. I have a presentation, and I will show later everything about that. Yesterday, I mean, there's a lot of, everything goes online now. So yesterday I did a cooking class or a cooking workshop for the synagogue in Berlin, because the Mimuna, which is the holiday that finishes Passover, the Jewish Passover, that was on Wednesday. But Berlin is a city with a wall, and therefore in Judaism we celebrate one day more. So there's one day more when you are not allowed to eat flour, and therefore the holiday in Berlin ended up only yesterday. So we did mufleta. Mufleta is this kind of pancake which you do just after the holiday, after the Passover. But I came up with the idea, I mean, we are in Germany, so let's make Black Forest mufleta. So I don't know if everybody knows this cake. It's a very iconic cake from South Germany, chocolate sponge cake with a lot of cream and with cherries and some cherry brandy. And so we did the mufleta, but Black Forest way. So you can also see it on my Facebook if you want later. That was quite a unique experience. We're going to talk today about the food. So I'm going to talk about Berlin, and an issue that I deal with a lot is what is regional food, and what in general, I mean, what is regional? I think there are some similarities between Berlin and Singapore, I guess, which is kind of funny to say, because Berlin is like a Babylon of cultures. We have people from 200 different nations in Berlin, about, I don't know, more than 100 languages being spoken in the city. Food comes from everywhere, of course. And there are things which are considered to be regional and things which are not considered to be regional, even though they may be regional, but I will get to it later. So I'm going to talk about what is regional and also about what you can get in Berlin. I'm starting with what I do. So I'm doing, as I said, I'm doing food tours about Berlin culinary history, about regional food, and but I also have a catering. I used to say I have a small catering, but it's actually grew quite a lot. So I did also quite big. I mean, I'm doing also bigger events. I'm doing, like, for example, the sponsorship for the Israeli Film Festival in Berlin. It's about 300 people each year. I'm doing it for the last 2 years. Let's see if we can still do it in this September. I'm doing the ITB, if you know, the International Tourism Fair in Berlin. That's the biggest in the world, and I did the catering for the Israeli tourism ministry for 2 years, but I'm also doing more conceptual events, and I will get to it later because we're also doing some food. So, and I will talk about that later. I'm doing food styling and food videos, and I'm doing also pop-up events, so more conceptual events. Let's talk about German food. So I don't know how many of you have seen German food painting before, but this is, for example, this is the Renaissance. Food painting was a big thing in 1500, 1600, and it's also a very good way for us today to analyze and to see what people used to eat at the time. These pictures are, of course, not from Germany. And now I will show you pictures of how German painters used to paint food. So these are this is Georg Flegel from around 1600, and these are typical German food paintings from 1500, 1600. And you can see an egg, a beer or a white wine, a bread, some root vegetables, but it doesn't look very, very appealing. And in general, until maybe the past 10, 20 years, food was not a central thing in the German culture. Whoever is beeping, if he can mute himself, that would be very nice. So Germans in general, German culture was not famous for its food. I lived in Italy. Italian culture, Spanish culture, French culture, they were all very, food was very fundamental. It was a center of what unites the state, and Germany is not like that. Because it's not Catholic, it's a Protestant culture, it's very humble, it's very modest, and also the nature is very poor in this area. It's very cold, and there are a lot of things which you can find in other countries in Europe, which you can't find in Germany. And therefore, food was in general not a main topic in German culture until the last 20 years, maybe. What can we find in Germany? So here you can see, of course, I made it a bit more caricaturistic. But this is the type of food you can find in Germany, at least what is defined as German food. So the Black Forest cake, which you can see in the center, we have potatoes, of course, a lot of potatoes, a lot of sausages, and a lot of pork. In general, there's a tendency to eat much more pork than other animals in German culture, mostly because it's much cheaper, pork meat. Much cheaper than beef, for example, and also the landscape. I mean, in general, at least north of Germany, until 1500, maybe until 1500, about 1500, most of the landscape was basically forests. So there were not a lot of open fields which you could grow meat. In Berlin is in the north of Germany, and so the landscape is even more poor. I mean, the richer regions of Germany are in the south of Germany, especially Bayern, which is Munich is the capital of Bayern, and the area of Schwarzwald, so the area of Black Forest to the border of France. That's the two more fertile areas of Germany. In Berlin, the landscape is quite poor. It used to be a big swamp, basically, until 1300. There was quite a big swamp around here. There are still a lot of forests, but the land itself, the soil, is not very fertile. What can we get here? As I said, pork. There's a lot of cabbage, and it doesn't sound amazing, but cabbage actually is one thing that Germans actually know how to grow really, really good, and there are quite a lot of types of cabbage. Brandenburg, so the area around Berlin is famous also for apples, and a lot of grains, but not wheat, but mostly rye. We have a lot of rye in this area because it's much more stable than wheat. What you don't see in the picture, and that's not by accident, is potatoes. Because potatoes until 1700 were not part of the German culture, actually. Like with tomatoes in Italy, like with eggplants in Italy, like with most other things like pumpkins, they all come from Central America, and therefore until 1500, 1600, nobody knew these vegetables or fruits in Europe. Potatoes arrived to Berlin or to Germany around 1700. And the one responsible for it is this guy over here. Anybody know him? Frederick the Great. Very central king in Germany. At the time, there was no Germany because Germany was established actually much later in 1870. But before that, it was divided into small kingdoms. And one of them was Prussia. Prussia was the kingdom that later united all of Germany, and its capital was Berlin. So Frederick the Great was the king of Prussia, and his palace was in Berlin. He had also a summer palace outside of Berlin, but that's the area where he sat. And Frederick the Great is not only called like that, he is called for many reasons the Great, but he is also the one who introduced potatoes to Germany. And at the time, like with aubergine, like with the tomatoes in Italy, nobody wanted to eat actually potatoes because it was considered to be something poisoned. A fruit, vegetables that you have to cook that is poisoned before, and you can't really eat it as is, and therefore a lot of people, I mean most people, wouldn't touch it. And what Frederick did, he planted it around his palace, and he put the guards on the fields, and he told the guards, you should guard it as if it's the most it's the biggest treasure we have, but at night I want you to stand off, and if the farmers go inside at night and start taking plants from the field, I want you to let them do it. And that's how it spread, actually. I mean, that's how people started to eat potatoes in Germany, because people started to think, okay, if the king thinks it's so valuable, so we have to try it also. And it sounds maybe like a legend, but it's a true story. And you can see it until today, because on his grave is buried outside of Berlin. The people, when they come to pay their respect, they always bring potatoes, and you can see it always, there are potatoes on his grave. He, by the way, he didn't have any children, and he's buried in his summer palace with his 11 dogs. So there are 12 graves, his, and 11 graves for his hunting dogs, which were buried with him later. We have quite a lot of potatoes in Germany. There are a few hundred types. On the right side, you can see the most ancient commercial species in Germany today, which is the Bamberger Hörnchen. It doesn't look so amazing, but it's actually very tasty. It's been in Germany since 1830. There's no commercial type of potatoes which is older. It has a European Union, today it has a European Union certificate, because it's a historical, type of potato. All German potatoes has names of females, actually. So you can see it, I mean, it's all, of course, German females, but you can see Laura and Linda, and there's Sieglinde and Gilena. Really, they are all names after women in Germany. Laura is my favorite, basically. I don't have Laura today because we are going to cook later dumplings. I did it with potato filling, but I didn't get Laura. Laura has a red peel from the outside and a very, very yellowish meat inside, and it's really, I think it's the best, it's the perfect potato, actually. If you are in Germany, this is one thing you have to try, potatoes. That's another one, CILENA, but it's only from 1981. You can see a lot of them are actually quite new. I mean, a lot of them are from the recent 20, 30, 40 years, not more, because there were a lot of developments in this field in Germany. I'm going a bit faster because I want also to show you some other things later, not just potatoes. And that's what I already said. It doesn't look amazing, and people today don't know it, and they start, I mean, because it looks like it needs a lot of, I mean, you need to peel it, and it's a lot of hassle, but you actually don't need to peel it. You can cook it as is, and it's really the perfect potato salad with this one. One more important things in Berlin food culture is the closed market, the market halls. The market halls, until 1850, there were no market halls in Germany, in Berlin area. It was all open market, open air market. And around 1890, the city started to build covered markets. And so, it was a really big chain of closed hall market halls. There were 14 of them. On the right side, you see the central one, which was destroyed in the war. Most of Berlin actually was destroyed during the Second World War, and between 1939 and 1945. And also, we have a lot of department stores, still historical ones that still exist till today. KaDeWe is a very famous one. KaDeWe is on the left side. It's from 1900. It's a department store of 7 floors, and it has the second biggest food court in Europe. The first one is Harrods, I think, in London. And KaDeWe is the second one. It has they import food from all over the world. If you are ever in Berlin, this is definitely something you have to see. Karstadt on the right side, that's a very famous German brand for a department store chain. Historical one, you can see it's from 1881. Also, quite a lot of big department store. The department store is basically something that was very popular in Berlin around 1900. These are some examples of the market halls that we can still find today. There are not a lot of them, as you can see. On the right corner up, you can see, for example, you see a remain. I mean, it's basically, I don't know if it's even 1/4. I mean, it's a small part of the old market hall in Kreuzberg. Kreuzberg is quite a famous neighborhood in Berlin. I will show you the map in a second. So these are all market halls that are still that you can still find in Berlin. This is Berlin. Berlin is quite big. Berlin is actually the second biggest after London in Europe. It's about 900 square meters, divided into different neighborhoods. And because it's so big, so each neighborhood is actually functioning as its own city. Each one has a mayor and a council, and there's one mayor for the whole of Berlin, and he sits in Mitte. Mitte is in the middle of the map. It's the center of the city. And because Berlin is not very central, we have east and west also. We had east and west until until 89. So until 30 years ago, the city was still divided between the two cities. So each neighborhood basically in Berlin has its own character, and it's very, very different. I live in Neukölln, for example. Neukölln, you can see in green down the map. It looks like it's East Berlin, but it actually used to be West Berlin because the division was not one line. And it's immigrant neighborhood. It's very, very young. Also Kreuzberg, Friedrichshain-Kreuzberg, which you can see just below Mitte, between Mitte and Neukölln, there's Kreuzberg-Friedrichshain. These are two very young neighborhoods in Berlin, a lot of immigrants, a lot of young people, a lot of new and old immigrants. Charlottenburg on the left side in pink, that's the Old West, so the city center of Old West Berlin. You can, and there you find also the more established places. I will show you some pictures from there later. Everybody, I guess, knows that Germany is big on sausages. Any of you know what currywurst is? Somebody? No?
Yes, we even discussed vegetarian one I had.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you were at my tour.
Yes.
I lived in Wisconsin in the US for about 3 years. And a lot of the sausages they have there are very similar to the German ones because it's such they're all the German immigrants settled in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know.
I know about Texas, right? Like Texas is big on German culture also. So this is Herta Hoyer. Herta Hoyer is, I mean, she is not very famous outside of Germany, especially outside of Berlin, but the name is in Germany, or at least in Berlin, is very famous because she came up with the most Berlinish food, which is the currywurst. Currywurst is iconic. Everybody that visits Berlin has to taste it. Currywurst is basically a sausage with a lot of sweet ketchup sauce, and then a curry powder on top. It doesn't sound very German, but this is actually the most iconic thing you can find in Berlin, and everybody that goes to Berlin knows he has to try it. And Herta Hoyer is the one actually, she came up with this recipe, and she did it in 1949. 1949, yeah. On the map here, you can see East and West Berlin. Herta Hoyer lived in Charlottenburg, so in the British sector at the time, because it was divided after the war, after the Second World War. And she came with the idea, so she came with the idea of making it with ketchup and curry powder. Until then, sausages in Germany were always served only with mustard. I mean, mustard is a big thing in Germany, and the most famous mustard in Germany actually comes from Bautzen. I guess nobody heard about it unless you're German, but in Germany it's quite famous. Bautzen is in the middle of Germany, and it's the capital, it's the mustard capital of Germany. But the thing is that Bautzen used to be in East Germany. And in 1948 until 1949, West Berlin was actually isolated from the rest of West Germany. And in general, especially from East Germany, because Berlin in general is located in the eastern part of Germany. So at the time, in 1948, there was a shortage of mustard in Berlin, actually. There was no mustard in Berlin in 1948, 1949, because all the mustard basically coming from East Germany, so they didn't have mustard at the time. What did they have? They had a supply from the American and from the British Army. So from the British Army, they had a lot of curry powder, because everybody knows, I mean, the British cuisine is very, very, it's famous for its Indian curry. And they had ketchup from the Americans. And these two ingredients Herta Hoyer took, and she mixed them and started serving it with the sausages. She had a sausage stand, and this actually became a hit. I mean, she even wrote the secret formula 10 years later, and she put a name on it. But the name, I mean, the brand that she came up with was it was called not ketchup, something like that. I forgot the name right now, but it was not called currywurst, which is the name that everybody knows it until today. So
אני הולכת לפריזר עכשיו להוציא פה נקניקיות ולערבב אותם. I'm going to mix now the curry I have at home with hot dogs. Oh my goodness, you're kidding me.
I can send you the recipe later.
Okay.
Put a lot of sugar inside, by the way.
I like sugar. Shall go defrost some hot dogs for us for late dinner. Olivia, you can join. I will do delivery. we cannot eat together, but at least we can share some.
You can do a takeaway.
Yeah, for sure.
So she's the one that came up with this idea, and actually, I mean, it was a big deal. At the 70s, she had a 24/7 diner. And she closed around in the 80s. She retired for pension. She was I think she was quite a wealthy woman in the end of her career. That's the statistics for how many currywurst are eaten in Berlin each day. So 10,000 for a week. I don't know, it's in Berlin, not in Germany. So 10,000 sausages are eaten in Berlin in a week. In Berlin, can you say it? You want to say it? I can't read it because my chat is off.
No, I said that in Berlin you can even get vegan currywurst, which I had, made from tofu. Yeah. I don't know if they counted them in the...
That's a good question. I think not. I don't think that it's... I have to check it out, actually. I mean, I'm not sure that it's considered to be in the statistics. So there are 10,000 for a week. 10,000 sausages eaten in Berlin for a week. 800 millions per year. And 800 million in the whole of Germany and 70 million only in Berlin each year. If you would go to the in Charlottenburg with me, I can even show you. I mean, she got a shield. They put a shield on the house where the stand used to be. And that's, as I said, I mean, that was considered to be the very essence of what is German food, at least in Berlin, until today. And as I said, I want to refer to what is regional food. So this is considered to be very, very regional. And let's talk about another regional food, which is not considered actually to be regional. It's still considered to be something from considered to be immigrants' food, which is the doner. The doner, so the Turkish meat screw, which is served as a sandwich in Berlin, not as a plated dish. Kani, if you want, that I don't think you can actually make at home. And the doner, everybody, if you've been to Istanbul or to Turkey, so probably you ate a doner. In Turkey, it comes always as a plated dish, or most of the time as a plated dish. It comes with rice, it comes with tomato, with beans cooked in tomato sauce on the side. And this actually, you won't find in Berlin. In Berlin, it looks very, very different. It comes as a sandwich. And this was invented by this guy over here in 1972. He was a Turkish immigrant that came to Berlin in the 60s. And he started his own small business. He started serving doner as a sandwich. And that's actually, I mean, today you can eat all over, but that's actually also something that was started in Berlin. I don't know where's the child, but if you can at least mute your microphone, thank you. And this is, as I said, not considered to be, this is not considered to be...
Itay, you can mute everyone.
No, I can't. Kani can.
Kani, you can mute everyone.
Sorry.
Just don't unmute me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine.
So I don't know what I feel about muting kids, if it's legal or not, or it's a startup. Okay. Okay.
Maybe you can design an application for life.
Yeah, I'll develop something.
So doner in Berlin, it's served in a bread, and it's served with red cabbage. Why red cabbage? Because we have a lot of it in Berlin, and it's very, very cheap. And cheap was the name of the game. I mean, that's the reason why they came up with the idea, because it's such a cheap dish. If you would go to Turkey and you would ask for a doner with red cabbage, I'm not responsible for the reaction you will get, actually, because this is something you are not. This is really a no-go in Turkey. This is a very German thing, and especially a Berlin thing. And how many? Let's talk about statistics from doner in Berlin. We talked about the sausages. Let's talk about the doner. So 1,600 shops in Berlin in 2016. I guess there are a bit more now, but that's the statistic I have. 400,000 a day. Before we talked about the sausages, we talked about 10,000. So 40 times more dishes are sold in a day. And here you can see a German icon, Angela Merkel, the Chancellor, the German Chancellor. And in Israel at least, when before the elections, the politicians, they always go to the market and they do the photo op in the market because they want to show how close they are to the people and how good they are with this being easygoing. Angela Merkel is always going to Kreuzberg in Berlin, and they always take the same picture of her standing with the meat screw. And you always see, I mean, it's always the same. I mean, she is not able actually to hold the knife as she should, but it always looks funny. The only difference, I think, is the color of the suit, but it's the same suit basically, just different colors.
How much does it cost, Itay? How much is
it's about 250 to 4 euros, let's say, if it's pricey. You can even get doner for 1 euro. I always tell my people who come with me on a tour, never eat doner for 1 euro, because if it costs 1 euro, just imagine how much the meat costs to produce it.
Mm. And it's street food? Is it called street food?
It's considered to be a street food in Berlin most of the time. We have more and more now. I mean, it becomes also, I mean, we have more and more fancy places or more, a bit more high-end places. Also that we have already a place, it's called Doner with an Attitude, and they serve doner for $6.50, which in Berlin is considered to be quite high for a doner. Here you can see the four biggest immigrating communities in Berlin. One is the Turkish migrants. They came to Berlin as working immigrants in the 60s and 70s to West Berlin, and the same goes for East Berlin with the Vietnamese community. There's a very big Vietnamese community. Don Xuan Center is a very big center for Vietnamese shops. If you need to make Vietnamese food and you are strict about your ingredients, you just go there. I mean, because this is the place where you can really get the most decent things. And of course, we have also, after the problems in the Middle East, we have a lot of people from the Middle East, not just Israelis, also Lebanese, but especially Syrians in the last years. I want to, I mean, one of the revolutions that Berlin is, that passes in Berlin in the recent years is the food. Food becomes much more important, as I said, in the last 20 years, but let's say even more accurate from 2012. I mean, there's a lot more decent food coming to Berlin, especially from immigrants. Because if before you could serve the doner with red cabbage because it's cheap and that's what German knows, so today we have much more authentic immigrants food. You can see it especially with the Italians. On the left side, I put the traditional Italian places from the 70s. They always look the same with the red, white stripes on the tablecloth. Leah, are you there, by the way? You still here? And Eyal also. Eyal, how many restaurants in Italy, in Florence, for example, did you see with this kind of tablecloth? I mean, with the red and white?
Only in America.
Yeah, and in other places which are, I mean, where you have ridiculous Italian restaurants, because nobody in Italy eats like that. I mean, maybe if you are in Napoli or
yeah, in the south a little bit.
Yeah, but this is the standard of how Italian should look. I mean, but it's very ridiculous. And on the right side, you can see the difference. I mean, that's the new Italian places, for example, and you see the difference even with the pizza, because I mean, pizza as it looks on the left side, that's not how pizza looks in Italy. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it looks very. I mean, for me, it looks sad. And on the right side, it's one of the new trendy places. So food becomes, I think in general in the world, food become much more now authentic, and people are looking for the authentic feeling and not now the what they have in mind about what is Italian or Arabic or Israeli food. I'm going to skip a bit, but these are some examples for food, for street food from the recent years. As I said, from 2012, street food became quite a hip thing in Berlin, and this is the most competitive sector today. Not the restaurant, but mostly street food stands, because this is really, really vibrant. Sorry?
Can I ask, what is that thing in the cone?
In the cone. That's that's an ice cream made in a waffle with this dotted thing. I even don't know how to call it.
Okay.
But I mean, it's more this, in general, I think there's a wave in the world of Instagram food. So food which is not just good, but food that you can take picture of, which is iconic. And
That's
actually the taste is less important.
It's
You
like
see it also in,
yeah.
Sorry, again?
It's like the paintings. They used to paint the food. Now people photograph the food.
Exactly. I mean, if you go to Prague, for example, you will get the kartoffel, which is this kind of sweet pastry, which is very traditional. And today they fill it with soft ice cream, and then they put also whipped cream on top. And this is like 1 kilo, 2 kilos of ice cream. I mean, you can put inside. And this is, I mean, who eats this kind of thing? I mean, it's only to take the picture for Instagram saying I was here and this is what I ate. But this, I mean, I have a lot of criticism about this kind of food. Actually, I mean, I think this is this culture of instant Instagram food. Going ahead, some more examples for fancy street food in Berlin. I want to show you some pictures from the tours. So I was talking, I mean, basically about, I don't want to start talking about all the neighborhoods in Berlin. I will talk about 2 neighborhoods. So Charlottenburg is one. Charlottenburg, the old school German Berlin. And I mean, you can really see the difference by the type of food you can find there. One establishment, a really good one in Berlin, is Rogatsky. Okay, Rogatsky, 90 years old German establishment in Berlin, family owned until today, and specialized in smoked fish. Berlin in Germany in general, I mean, is very, very big on smoking fish, and Rogatsky is the most famous in Berlin for that. Here you can see the smokery, it's quite a big one. And I'll show you some more pictures from Rogatsky. Karni, if you didn't take out the sausages, maybe you want some fish.
Oh, it's not fair because it's the only thing that I cannot get here in Singapore.
I become hungry now.
How did you know it? I hope you have delivery here to Singapore because the first thing that you tell me, Kylie, will be smoked fish. Okay, sorry. Yes, I cooked already my potatoes, by the way. So okay.
This is one of the most iconic, and I mean, if I talked about smoked fish, so the most iconic dish in Berlin kitchen is actually the eel, because Berlin used to be, as I said, a swamp, and smoked eel is a delicacy, is a local delicacy, and Rogatsky specialized in smoked eel, and that's what you can see in this picture, that smoked eel. And I can say really there's a reason why this is the specialty. It's really the best thing you can have if you're coming to Berlin. So if you're coming to Berlin, this is definitely the place. One more place which I really like is Blohmeyer's. Blohmeyer's, it's a German cheese shop, which you can see here. I will have Fritz Blohmeyer, the owner, on a talk in the next weeks, maybe next week or the week after, I still don't know. Fritz is considered to be the best, the most knowledgeable expert for cheese in Berlin. I don't want to say in Germany, but in Berlin for sure. And his shop is really, it's amazing. It's an amazing shop. He brings only German cheese, but as you can see, very, very high-end cheese. He has very, very special cheese. He has also some other local products. For example, honey. Honey is a big thing in Germany, and you can find not just honey from Germany, not just honey from Berlin, but actually honey from the neighborhood. So they are located 300 meters from the shop. This guy creates 200 jars a year. You can see the number, so it's actually, it's numbered, and you can get it only on this shop, and he has, as I said, 200 jars a year, and that's all. And it's quite good honey. And you can see that's another cheese. I will get to it later. But this, for example, is also from West Berlin, but from another area of the city. And you can see already the color is different because the environment is different. Honey can be very, very different between one area to another. It all depends on what the bees add to eat. I'll just get to this cheese and then I will go on. This is a very, very good cheese. It's actually covered with the leftovers of the wine industry. So it's basically the what's left from the grapes after squeezing everything. That's the leftovers. They cover the cheese with it, and then it's been aged with this with the leftovers of the wine. And it's as amazing as it sounds, actually. And it's made from raw milk, so not pasteurized milk. Just going to Kreuzberg for a second. Kreuzberg immigrants area. You can find a lot of immigrants food. Turkish baklava. This is a very, very good one. I mean, this is actually the best one I know, made with pistachio. Pistachio, I mean, I don't know about you, but it's for me, it's a great love. Turkish food, but real Turkish food. What else do we have here? Second. Some Italian pastry shop, a very good one. She comes from Genova in Italy, and she makes these small fancy pastries. These are, by the way, quite cheap. I mean, Berlin in general is a very cheap city. These cost $1.50 for each. Quite a lot of work for this country. Some more Turkish food. And now we're going to talk about, we're going to make some food because I don't know about you, but I'm already hungry. So one of my specialties, I do also Italian food, I do also Israeli food, but one of my specialties is actually fancy Jewish food, Ashkenazi food, so food from East Europe Jewish communities, because my origin at least are from Poland, and I do Polish Jewish food in a fancy way. I started with it a few years ago when I started also my catering, and it's a thing which I try also. I mean, I participated in a cooking book with some recipes. This recipe especially, I mean, the one that we are going to do now, it's also from this book. It's called kreplach, which is the Jewish Polish dumplings. Here served in a soup. What else you can see here is gefilte fish. I don't know how many of you know the origin, but gefilte fish is fish balls from carp, usually served not in such a way. Here you can see it with beetroot ice cream on the side, and with creme fraiche with horseradish and some fermented carrots on the side. So that's my fancy gefilte fish. This is all pictures from a Jewish Polish dinner club, which I did a few years ago. That's duck breast in plum sauce. There's tzimmes on the side. Tzimmes is the cooked carrots with cinnamon and plums. And what else do I have here? And this is a compote. I don't know how many of you know compote. Compote is basically all the fruits leftovers cooked as a cold soup. Why is it stuck now? And here it's being served. I basically deconstructed it. So the compote was turned into a jello, which you can see on the picture, and then there was also compote ice cream and a small cake on the side. The powder is hibiscus powder. But right now we are going to make kreplach. This is from the book, which Karni also posted. And we're not going to make the fancy shape, but we're going to make the shape as we saw today. Anybody is cooking with me, or am I cooking by myself today?
I'm joining you, Itay.
Yeah, great.
Tell me
so
carbs and potatoes together with dough.
I'm moving myself to the kitchen.
Yeah, me too. First of all, does anyone have any questions to Itay? Because
yeah,
Itay,
please ask.
I'm convinced, okay? So I've never been to Berlin, and I've been a few times to Seefeld in Germany, but This curry hot dog, I'm coming. I ate it here in Singapore, but I want okay, I made the stuffing already. I'll go to boil water.
Me also. So the stuff's in. I made already mashed potatoes. You can see here. Yeah. And I did it with fried onions, but some butter inside. Yeah, great. And now we start with the dough. It's a very plain dough made with very, very plain flour. Nothing too fancy. I'm using like the most basic flour, the most basic white flour, and boiling water. So we have, I'm boiling the water now. I hope it doesn't, I hope the sound is not irritating.
Hi, did you say 2 cups of plain flour?
Yeah, we start with 1 cup of flour,
okay,
and 1 cup of water. And some, because I always forget that, so some salt. You can already put the salt, but it will melt by the boiling water. And we stir it, of course, not by hand at first, because it's very, very hot. We stir it with a spoon. So now you can actually see what I'm doing.
Itay, to put the boiling water inside the 1 cup of
Yeah.
flour?
Yeah.
And if it's too sticky, to start adding more
It should.
flour?
No. First, wait. Here. Now I'm good. You can see my bowl right now, right? Tony, you can see my bowl?
Yes.
So I'm just like, I put 1 cup of flour, 1 cup of water, boiling water. And then I stir it.
You know,
Just
it's
like that.
like the Japanese gyoza dough.
Really?
Using, yeah, and the Chinese dim sum that I make.
Uh-huh.
Are you adding an egg later? Inbar is joining us
Yeah.
today. We have
some time.
right? Inbar is from a small village near Milano. Sorry, I don't remember the name. The tourist, she's also doing cooking classes and culinary adventures. So she came to learn about how to make pasta, the Polish version.
Connie, now you can add the other cup. Don't start with the whole cup, because maybe it's too much. So I add like 3/4, half.
I hope that everyone by the end of the night will show us some krepalach.
Now it's, by the way, also not so hot anymore. I mean, I can at least walk with my hand already inside.
Yeah. Should the egg is for the stuffing or for the?
No, for the dough. Now I'm going to add the egg. I mean, I wait a bit that it's not so warm, and then I don't want the cooked egg inside, of course. I just want to roll the sleeves up.
My dough is perfect, so maybe I won't add the dough because it's too hot.
Did you add the egg already? Show me.
I didn't add the egg.
Okay.
So you see, but
you see now I put the egg inside.
So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put some more flour to cool the batter. The dough.
Yeah.
So as you see, Itay is struggling now. What we do now, I'm doing it also, teaching how to make Chinese bun, steamed dough online in Zoom. I tell you, the challenges we have in life these days of Corona is crazy.
Yep. And you can add like one spoon of oil inside, plain oil.
Excellent dough, very soft and nice.
Yeah, it's a very if you don't have experience with dough, this is actually one of the best one to start with, because it's very, very easygoing. I mean, you can add more flour, less flour. I mean, it's really, I mean, now it's too sticky, so I add a bit more flour. But it's a very forgiving dough, I always say.
Mine is ready.
Yeah, it needs some more kneading, I think, like 2 minutes kneading. Can already transfer it here.
In Bar, you teach how to make pasta with egg and without egg in your food tours, in your cooking classes?
Yes, in South Italy we use the first I want to say thank you, and it's nice to see you all. And
here.
yes, in our area, we are from South Italy. We prepare mostly pasta with semolina flour and water without eggs.
So semolina without other flour, without wheat flour. I mean the regular. Oh,
it's a durum. It's a very thick wheat, and we use it with water, and we make a kind of the shape of pasta. It's usually orecchiette, cavatelli, fusilli, and this kind.
Okay, so I think we will have to host you again here in Foodies in Asia.
I would like to one day.
Voila. Okay, I'm ready.
You're ready? Me also. I'm getting a roller, washing my hands, and then we start to stir this.
Okay.
I forgot to mention that you need a roller. But actually, if you don't have one, because I'm used to improvising when I'm cooking at somebody else's place. So last time, for example, I did it and there was no roller. I used a bottle of wine, and it's actually worked even better than the roller for me. So if you don't have a roller, use a bottle of wine.
Meanwhile, we are kneading the dough. Is there anyone that wants to ask Itay something about his food tours? When is he available after the corona?
After the corona, yeah.
So
let's do a small one.
Yeah, okay. So what are we doing now, Itay? How does the German, what's the German approach for a foreigner from Israel or just a foreigner that does food?
Well, Berlin is, as I said, Berlin is a very, very international city with a lot of immigrants. So, I mean, it's very, very common, I mean, to be an immigrant in the city. We don't, I mean, we always laugh about it that Berliner are a dying species. I mean, you don't see a lot of original Germans in Berlin, especially not people born in Berlin. I mean, that's quite rare. This year I had a personal achievement because I guided 2 tours for a culinary festival in Berlin. It's called Eat Berlin. It's like a very traditional one. It was the 9th year that they are doing it. And this is the first year which I guided the tour, and I did all people on my tour were actually German. So I needed to do a tour in German and not in English or in Hebrew as I'm used to. But also, I mean, to tell German people about the culinary history of Berlin, that for me was really funny. I mean, that I'm, as a foreigner, 9 years after coming to Berlin, I give the tour to the Germans about the culinary history.
Well, Itay, I went on one of Carney's tours, and she was fantastic because I was born and raised in Singapore. I've lived here all my life, so I know a lot about Singapore food. But to see it from a perspective of someone who has only, has lived in Singapore for a lot less years, but who's just so passionate about the food and finds out so much more than maybe even the locals know. It was so exciting for me. So it's probably exciting for those Germans to have you guide them as well.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the funny or maybe the sad thing is actually also that sometimes I feel that I'm more aware, I'm more educated about German food culture than most Germans are. I mean, I can tell them about things that they usually don't know about, like with the potatoes, which I started to talk before. And I had a lot of time, I mean, I explained Germans about potatoes types because people today, they are not really connected to this kind of things and they don't have the information. I mean, you can ask more, but I just want to explain what I'm starting to do. So I take a cup, very plain cup, and I'm doing now the circles in the dough.
I wish I had some meat to stuff them. And not
it's very good actually with the chicken from the soup. That's I mean, because myself, I really hate cooked chicken from the soup. I mean, I can't stand it as a thing by itself. And if you put it inside the kreplach, it's actually tasting very nice.
So I must share a funny story that in Singapore, one of the most famous dish in Singapore is called chicken rice, which is a chicken that is cooked in his own fat.
Like confit?
No, not like confit because it's not cooked for a long time, but it's like a rich broth of chicken. And at the end of the day, the chicken that you see is very, very pale. Or like we call it in Israel, of mechubas. Of mechubas is a chicken that is have passed the laundry. You made laundry from the chicken and then you get a white thing. So my guide Lionel, one day he took an Israeli group because I couldn't guide them. And he said, one thing I learned from the Israeli guest, what is of mechubas? So, the first impression, then when I came to Singapore and I saw this of mechubas, I said to myself, okay, I really like it because I'm half Polish. So my father told my mother, just boil me the chicken. In the soup, I'm okay with it. No need to roast, no need for hoisin sauce or something like this. And it's funny to see, but it's not really of mechubas. It's so rich with flavors of garlic and pandan, which is a local herb, and ginger, and it's served with chili, and it's really, really something special. So it's not only mechubas, but you say that we can use the of mechubas or the boiled chicken from the soup.
Yeah, with some fried onion. I mean, it goes really great inside. I used a lot of flour because I'm in a hurry. I mean, I didn't want to bother too much. So I used a lot of flour. If you have a problem to stick it together, I mean, when you fold it, I will show you now. So you can, of course, use some water. I mean, to put some water over here on the corners and then to do it. It's easy. I don't do it. I mean, you see, it's not like ravioli. I mean, it's much thicker. And I'm just folding it like that to half. And then I close it like that. And you see, it's a very, very easy way of doing it. And that's, I mean, there are a lot of ways how it should be closed and blah, blah, blah. That's the way my grandmother used to do, and that's the way I know.
איתי, תראה לך טיפה יותר נמוך.
Can you see it now? I put it here. Can you see it? ענבר, זה בסדר?
See, but show one little bit.
Okay.
Because it was too much.
Here? Here?
More, the other side? Yes, perfect.
Here.
No,
okay. Like that. So I just fold it to the side, and then I just close it like that. And then these you cook in a chicken broth, or you can cook it also in salt water. About 2-3 minutes. I mean, because the filling is anyway cooked already.
Wow, fantastic dough.
Connie, how does it look at your phone? Show me.
Can you see mine?
Yeah.
Mine is already a gyoza.
It's very relaxing, I think, to do these kind of things. And I have like, I did this also for bigger dinners. So I did it once for a dinner in the synagogue for the Jewish Food Festival, and we had 100 guests. Each one got 2 at his soup. So we did about 200 dumplings like that. I think it's meditative in a way. I mean, it's very. I can do it for a few hours.
The most, I think that the most exciting thing about it, it really reminds me some people from Israel, all my friends' grandparents that made it. Wow.
Yeah,
You know, it's very good with chicken liver.
Yeah, exactly. That was our, like once a year, my grandmother used to do it with chicken liver after Yom Kippur. So after the fast, and that was a big thing.
Maybe some of the people here don't know that Polish food in Israel have sometimes bad reputation. I can say so, Itay. So
yeah, of course. I mean, that's my job basically, to make it fancy and more appreciable. Because I think it doesn't get enough. I mean, its reputation. I think it's wrong. I mean, you see. I mean, this is really cute. In Bar, how is it like as a pasta expert?
I don't think you're less than as an expert than me. You were staying many years in Italy, so you have your hand. It's very similar for ravioli or other kind of stuffed pasta.
Yeah, but with much more soft flour. I mean, this is really soft.
Yes, it's different.
Yeah. And these, so as I said, you can cook them. After you cook them, you can either eat them like that, or you can eat them in a soup, chicken or vegetable soup. I like also to fry them after. You can fry them in a pan with some oil.
With onion.
With onion.
Yeah.
Really goes great. I know what I'm going to eat this evening.
I also know what I'm going to eat, but why are we doing this live so early, late at night?
In Europe, it's still 4:30, so we are fine. I mean, this is like still going. I mean, this is still makes sense.
Yes, but I'm in Asia, and my kids had a bad dinner at 3 o'clock, following the live from Israel with the fish. So now they will come back home and they will ask, Mommy, what's for dinner at 10:50? Kreplach. I love kreplach. Okay, so Itay, do you want to summarize?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me switch the view.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Connie, for having me. I mean, this was amazing.
I have a strange feeling that I'm taking you again. So,
more than welcome. Maybe we can do German food next time.
You know what?
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
And Tom, thank you so much for being our followers. Bring your drink and your friends and join us next week also.
We love it. It just makes us so hungry though.
Next week, I think we are going to have a Romanian food expert with some, איך קוראים לקבב? מיטטה, or some kebab, מיטטה, I think, no? Something like that, מיטטה. Anyway, so stay tuned. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Wok'n'Stroll, Foodies in Asia. Itay, how are you called in all the social media?
Elements of Food.
Elements of
Food on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. You are more than welcome to follow. It's the website. I mean, if you write Elements of Food Berlin, I mean, you will get also the website. That's perfect, Connie. That's really nice. They don't open. I mean, that's a nice thing. It's a really good dough. They don't open when you cook them in water. That's the nice thing.
And I'm not even using the water. So Amir for Madrid.
Thank you.
Eyal, Edith, thank you everyone. See you on our next meeting. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you, Itay. Thanks, Connie.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Thank you, Itay. Thank you, Carney. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.